In this video, I'm going to explain to you what everybody gets wrong about the Chaos King and the Chaos War. Hello guys and girls, my name is Purple Hat Man and welcome to another comic book video where I think I'm going to be talking about something informative and important when it comes to Marvel. And as you can see from the title and the little intro sequence at the start of this video, it's what everybody is getting wrong about the Chaos King and the Chaos War. And when I say everybody, I really mean a few big comic book YouTube channels I've seen. But I'm here to set the record straight. On that note, if you could leave this video a like, a comment, and if you want to share it for me, that'll help it reach as many people as we can, so everybody's got the right idea from now on. And if you want to see more videos just like this, then you can subscribe. I will be doing more videos like this in the future. Now, with that being said, there are three things I need to mention before we get started, and one is that I really enjoy the Chaos War as a story, not least because it features one of my favourite drawings of Galactus ever put to comic, but also because the Chaos King himself was a brilliant and imposing villain whose motivations were simple and easy to understand and kind of justifiable. The rest of the story was very well written, and even all the ways, like, the heroes in the story, like every character in the story basically, they were all just written really well. And it's still a story that, even though I read it 10 years ago, still holds up to this day. Two is that the structure of this video is going to have to be quite different, because usually I'd like to leave like a big reveal at the end, which would be what everyone was getting wrong, and spend the beginning of the video explaining the hows and whys and background and all that stuff. But I'm going to have to do it the other way round here. I'm going to tell you what everybody gets wrong, and then I'm going to spend the rest of the video explaining why. So, what everybody gets wrong about the Chaos King and the Chaos War is that it was a multiversal event. It wasn't. And finally, three, I don't blame anybody for getting this wrong. I literally don't blame a single person for thinking that the Chaos War was a multiversal thing, because it is explicitly said during the story. Right here at the start of the final battle against the Chaos King, an extremely intelligent character called Amadeus Cho says that the Chaos King has destroyed 98.76% of the multiverse, and it explicitly says multiverse right here, plain as day. Nobody can argue that. Now, when I first read this story, I hadn't been reading comics for a long time, like not long at all, maybe a few months, maybe a year or so. So even though I knew what a universe was and what a multiverse was, I wasn't very clear on the rules or the details specifically. So when I heard multiverse mentioned in the story, I was like, oh wow, this is a big event. This is bigger than I thought it was. This is big and dangerous and exciting. Yay. It raised the stakes for me, is how I took it, like the multiverse is involved. And that's just all I thought it meant. But now, being very experienced with Marvel especially, and its multiverse and all of its intricacies, this mention of multiverse in this story just leaves me with one expression. What? Because it just makes no sense, and get used to that picture because I'm going to be using it a lot throughout this video. Now, as I was going back through the Chaos War story in preparation for this video, I actually found two more mentions of multiverse throughout the story. One is when Amadeus Cho, at the end of the story, very, very close to the end of the story, says that Athena said, "I'd always save the multiverse," and the other is actually going to take a bit of explanation, so I'm going to explain that later on. But let's get into why it wasn't multiversal, and the first example I have is at the start of the story. Hercules gathers all of the heroes of Earth to fight the Chaos King, and he describes to them what he is so that they know what they're fighting. And he describes him as the whole universe before the beginning of everything. And quite clearly he says universe here. So immediately we're getting mixed messages. We've got Hercules saying universe and Amadeus Cho saying multiverse. It's immediately very confusing. What we have happen next is that, using his newfound godlike powers that Hercules had during this story, he summons the cosmic entity Eternity to fight against the Chaos King. Now, Eternity represents the sum total of all creation, basically, in a single universe. And Eternity quite clearly explains that the Chaos King is his polar opposite. He is the darkness against which he is defined. So if Eternity represents all of the life in a single universe, then the Chaos King represents the absence of all creation and living things in a single universe. Just one. Now we need to talk about how the Chaos King is defeated. and it comes by way of a story that took place a bit before the Chaos War, where the Greek goddess Hera creates a bubble universe that she wants to rule over without the interference of anybody else, and it's called Continuum. And Amidius Cho hatches a plan to move everyone from this universe safely into Continuum and then just let the Chaos King take this universe. And this is where we get the third mention of multiverse throughout the story. It comes in the way where Amidius Cho is explaining the nature of Continuum in regards to the multiverse. Now, he does say that since the Big Bang, the universe, singular, has been expanding. But then he goes on to say that Continuum is completely isolated from the rest of the multiverse. Now, he's just explaining the nature of Continuum as a bubble universe here in relation to the rest of the multiverse. He's not saying anything specific about the Chaos King and his relation to the multiverse and Continuum and how all three of those things, link together. So I don't think this is too much to my discredit, but here is yet another mention of multiverse. So then we get the final defeat of the Chaos King, and it actually transpires that instead of moving everyone from Earth to Continuum, they just force the Chaos King inside Continuum. He takes it over instantly, as there was basically no existence in that bubble universe anyway, and then he is the only thing in existence. To his eye, he has won, and to everybody else, he is now trapped in a bubble universe, thinking that he's won when really he's been tricked and defeated. But I have one major problem with this. If the Chaos King was attacking the multiverse, why would he be satisfied with the space inside one bubble universe? If his goal was to encompass the whole of the multiverse into nothing and being the only thing in the whole multiverse, which is basically nothing again, why would he be tricked by this? Amidius Cho even confirms this by saying that Continuum is now the Chaos King's universe. Universe singular. This doesn't make any sense and forces me to pull this what face again, because an entity that would represent the destruction of the multiverse would not be tricked like this, surely. And we know that the Chaos King is not the cosmic entity that represents the death of the multiverse, because that's name is Oblivion. Speaking of Oblivion, like I say, he is the cosmic entity that represents the absence of a multiverse. When there is not a multiverse in existence in Marvel, Oblivion is what is there instead. Which leads me to talk about a moment outside the main Chaos War story, where Oblivion comments on the nature of the Chaos King and the Chaos War, and how it relates to him. Now immediately, I do find what he says here very confusing, because he seems to be coming at it from two angles. Immediately, he says that the Chaos King came so very close, which does imply to me that he did come very close to multiversal destruction, because that is Oblivion's aim. If he's saying you came very close, then clearly you must have come very close to multiversal destruction. But right then after that, he says that the Chaos King is just one aspect of the infinity that I am. Now that sounds to me more like he's describing the way a universe is just one small aspect of the infinity that is a multiverse. He seems to be comparing him on a universal scale now, which again is to my credit, but is immediately very confusing. He does also describe the Chaos War as merely a prelude, which again sounds like a multiversal thing, but could also mean part one, as in part one, the destruction of one universe, leading to the destruction of many others, eventually leading to, hopefully, Oblivion hopes, the death of the multiverse. Now I'm going to talk about the single most damning piece of evidence that the Chaos War did not affect the multiverse. And it's not anything we see a character say, or do, or anything we see take place in the story at all. It's what we don't see that matters. Because what we don't see is any characters from any other universe in the multiverse trying to intervene, trying to join the fight against the Chaos King. If 98% of the multiverse was under threat, don't you think some people from the Old Man Logan universe, or the Age of Apocalypse universe, or the Marvel Zombies from the Marvel Zombies universe, or the Ultimates from the Ultimate universe, that somebody from another universe would be trying to help? The Council of Reeds, the different versions of Mephisto and Hela. We know there are other versions of Galactus out there. Why are none of these people from other universes that we know are out there in the multiverse showing up to help? The simple answer is that their universes are not under attack. The Chaos King is only attacking the main 616 universe because he is a universal threat. So as a final part of the video, I want to have a go at describing the relationship between the Chaos King, Universal Eternity, Oblivion, and Multiversal Eternity, a version of Eternity that represents the whole multiverse, so that you can better understand how these four entities relate to each other, and I'm going to start with the Chaos King and Eternity. So I want you to imagine, if you will, that the white space on screen right now represents a single universe in the Marvel Multiverse. The black around the outside means nothing. When I make it full screen in the edit, it looks kind of weird and kind of blinding, so I downsized it a bit. So just ignore the black around the outside, okay? Focus on the white space. So the white space is a single universe. And then I've put a black speck on the left-hand side, kind of, that represents the Chaos King, that little piece of nothingness that is present inside every universe. And then we get the Chaos War initiating. So the Chaos King starts destroying gods and then eventually destroying everything and everyone until his darkness spreads over the universe until it consumes a vast majority of it and then nearly all of it. And what we don't see in the Chaos War is if he were to win, then everything would become nothing. And obviously when everything is nothing, the Chaos King is the only thing in existence, or the only thing not in existence, depending on how you look at it. But then, as always, creation will start again. You'll get a speck of creation. For some reason brought about by something, we don't know what, doesn't really matter, but creation and life always starts again. It spreads until eventually there's a whole universe full of creation again, and that aspect of nothing, aka the Chaos King, is just a speck again. And when a universe has creation, obviously this is universal eternity. So this is a natural life and death cycle of a universe. This cycle is confirmed by Athena during the Chaos War story, because the whole reason she's helping the Chaos King to win, basically, is that she knows that order will re-emerge and that existence can try again, as it always does. So I want you to imagine now that this white space is a multiverse, so it's multiversal eternity. Whatever being represents a whole multiverse, that's what this is. And I want you to imagine that it's made up of, tiny white universes making up this larger whole, okay? And the black around the outside still means nothing. Ignore it. So, we've got the multiverse. Now let's say that the Chaos King, or an equivalent being, starts a war to destroy all things in a particular universe. It'll look something like this. So the first universe falls. Now let's imagine that the Chaos War, or a similar event, happens in every universe across the multiverse. So you're going to see universes start blanking out all over the place. Then an awful lot of them. Even the vast majority of universes falling into nothing, until maybe there's only one left. And if that universe falls into nothingness, we get absolutely nothing throughout the whole multiverse. This blackness in front of us right now. And that is Oblivion. When there's not a physical existing multiverse in Marvel, there is Oblivion. That is his role to take up that space. And that is the life and death cycle of a multiverse. So there you have what I believe happens in the whole scheme of creation and non-creation throughout Marvel, in universes and multiverses and all of that stuff. So I think that makes sense. I mean, every entity there has a clearly defined role, a clearly defined purpose, and it makes sense how they flow from one to the other. And if that's the way it is happening in Marvel, if that's the way the writers intended it to be, then it makes perfect sense. And that's what I believe, and they've got evidence to support it. So I hope this made things clearer. I wanted to do this little visual representation, and I hope it was successful. But now I want to mention the absolute final thing I did for this video, which was do a bit of background research into the creationist beings of Marvel, like Eternity and the Chaos King, and just do a bit of fact-finding. And what I did find was a bunch of very confusing information. So here we have a panel where Galactus is referring to Eternity as the universe, every universe, and the Omniverse all at the same time. We have a version of Eternity where he is calling the Earth, one single version of Earth in one universe, his heart, and explaining that he as a universe must die, so referring to himself as a single universe. And then we clearly have one here where a version of Eternity is being birthed from being the 7th version of the multiverse to being the 8th version of the multiverse. Clearly this is a multiversal version of Eternity. And then finally we have the Living Tribunal being called the Multiverse Taken Form, which all of this leads me to believe that sometimes, a lot of the time, Marvel and its writers don't know what the hell they are talking about, are just making up as they go along and don't really care that much for clearly defining the roles of these beings that they create, which is all quite disheartening. And that is it. That is what everybody gets wrong about the Chaos King. He was not a multiversal threat. And the fact is that if we disregard the times Amidius Cho says multiverse during the Chaos War story itself, then there's very little to no evidence to suggest it was multiversal. And in fact, there's a lot of evidence to suggest it was universal, like you've seen in this video. As for why multiverse was even mentioned, like, oh, why did they even put it in the story to begin with? I think the simplest answer is that the writer, or a head up at Marvel at the time, wanted to make the story seem bigger and more exciting. So they said, oh, for the finale, let's say it's a multiversal thing and that'll hype everybody up. And that's certainly the effect it had on me when I first read the story. Like I said at the start of the video, I was like, oh wow, this is bigger than I thought. This is very exciting. Like, great. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really work in the grand scheme of things, and we're just going to have to live with that contradiction from now on and believe whatever's most likely. And what's most likely is that it was universal, not multiversal. But that's it. I'm going to stop talking because I have been talking a lot for this video. I would appreciate a like and a comment on this video because they do take a bit of effort from me. And if you want to see more stuff like this, you can subscribe. I will be making more things like this in the future. But that is it. I have been Purple Hat Man. You have been a great audience. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in another video very, very soon. Bye-bye. Now we're back from the dead.